We're rolling whenever you want. But yeah, just kind of like what you remember about your parents and your mom. And
Okay. Are we on?
we are on. You can just talk to me.
Okay, well, I really do not remember anything about my grandparents' Kokel.
Yeah.
My parents were 40, possibly a little bit older than that when I was born. I have two older sisters, quite a bit older. Excel got married in May of the year that I was born, in January. And then my other sister, Arlie, was 15 years older than I. So she was more like a mom and a sister all rolled into one. And my first really time together with my oldest sister was when Presley was born. And she came and spent a week after I got out of the hospital. And I'd never had any experience with babies, little ones, or anything. So when she said it was time for her to go home, I said, I'm on my own with this little guy. So anyway, that was pretty special. But the other thing is I was able thereby to grow up with my nieces and nephews. 2 nieces and 2 nephews. And Larry was the oldest, and he's 2 years younger than I, and Janet was 3 years younger than I. So we're, we call each other Sister Pat, and yeah, so it's fun to be that close with your nieces and nephews. So anyhow, I can start with my parents, I guess. My dad was in the ginning business with the Deering family, and Daddy seemed to have a knack with the mechanical side of things. So since there are a lot of moving parts to a gin that have to be maintained, in the downtime, as well as have adequate work people and that you can depend on to do a good job to make sure that there's no fire in the stands and that it doesn't, there's no rocks in with the cotton that get pulled up into the gin, and there's a lot of things to
looks like my parents
to monitor. And he did have a very good force of people that he depended on. And I still, at church, it's in this little community, everybody's like a big family. And so at church, shortly after we moved back here, after being gone for 50 years in LaPorte, one Sunday I was exiting the church, and one of the ladies was standing there, and she says, "Well, hello, Pat." And I said, "Do I know you?" And she said, "Well, you probably don't know me by my last name," but she said, "I was a dunk." And I said, "Dunk." My daddy had a wonderful man that worked the stands in the cotton gin, and his name was Ben Dunk. She said, "That was my uncle." I said, "Okay." Small world, isn't it? So anyway, and he had, and Lula, Richter's husband, is still a member of Zion, and Gus was one of the people that Daddy had that did a lot of things. And we had, I think Harold Micken was there also, at least for a short period. And the gin season wasn't very long. Arlee's birthday was August the 22nd.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on or about that day that the first bale of cotton rolled into the gin. And of course the gin was my favorite place to play because it had stairs going up into the machinery, and I was watching the pulleys and the belts and everything work, and I thought that was so fascinating. And but anyway, getting back to the cotton ginning season, and if I remember correctly, the last cotton had to be out of the field by the end of October, so that left 2 busy months because there was fear of the boll weevil getting into the cotton crop. And
Makes sense.
I'm sure most farm people know what a gin is all about. It separates the fiber from the seed so that the seed, which I think was used by the farmers to plant more cotton, and this was the #1 cotton producing area in the world, according to my Southwestern economics professor, which I didn't know at the time. But it was a busy time, and they would start up the gin Monday morning. Actually, I think at midnight, Sunday to Monday, they would crank it up, and it would go all week until midnight Saturday or 6 p.m. Saturday, and then it would shut down so that everybody could go to church on Sunday and have some rest. And I think we must have had more than one crew, I'm thinking. And anyway, my mother contributed. She says, well, these guys just can't go all through the night without working and not having some snack. So she stayed up and made sandwiches and baked cookies and coffee cake and various things so that right around midnight or a little bit before, she could take them their midnight snack. And in the meantime, she would crochet. She'd stay up till then, and she would crochet. And then after her mission was accomplished, she would go back. She would go home and go to bed. And so anyway, that was my remembrance of the ginning business.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun. I see it down there, and it's hasn't been used in a long time, and the industry has changed a lot. And I remember my cousin John, who you saw earlier. I think our parents must have gotten together and decided that he and I needed a little bit of practical experience picking cotton. So they sent us next door across the field from my mother's garden, and we got to pick cotton. And back in that day, you pluck the cotton boll out of the boll itself, the fiber, and it was this nice, beautiful, white, fluffy stuff. And we'd have a big, long sack that we put it in. And John and I had a goal of picking 100 pounds of cotton in one day. And I think most days we did that. So we were so proud of ourselves, but we were really tired, and especially in that summer sun, we decided, maybe there's an easier way to do things. So we didn't want to do that the rest of our lives. So we ended up at Southwestern. And
Teaching you a lesson.
so anyhow, that's my recollection of that there. And of course, we were all members of Zion Lutheran Church in school. Was fortunate to spend eighth grades in the Lutheran school, and then from there I went to Georgetown High School, and from there on to Southwestern. I loved learning. To me, it was just the grandest experience to feed new stuff into my brain. So I said, well, I just have to have a college education. And the only hope I had was Southwestern because it was close and I could live at home. And one of our church members actually was the valedictorian of of Georgetown High School a few years before and I found out from that she got a scholarship. And I said, maybe I can do that. So I studied extra hard and got my scholarship. And once I had that in hand, I said to Daddy, do you think I could borrow the family car to drive to class at Southwestern? Well, I think we could do that. So that's what we did. And of course, God had a plan. Registration day, guess who showed up right behind me in line to register? Joe Mock from LaPorte. And rather ironically, but at our 50-year anniversary at Southwestern from graduation, Roberta Byram at the time, I don't know what her married name is, but she says, oh, we all saw the sparks fly. So we will be spending, May 30th will be our 58th wedding anniversary. And so that was rather interesting. We dated for 2 years and then got married at the end of our second year, and lived in Georgetown. We were able to walk to school, and then let's see, spring of the senior year, I found out I was pregnant. And so Presley was born December 31st of 1960. And I still had one semester of class before the end of the semester, the end of January. And my doctor says, well, you can't climb stairs. When all my classes were in the administration building. So I said, well, don't know what to do. So I went to my professors and I asked for their opinion, and they said, well, we'll just bring your final exam down to the first floor and just don't bother to come to class. You've been a good student. And, you know, review your work and do your papers, and we'll just call it good. So we did. That's what we did.
That's great.
And Presley got to come to our graduation. I still have a picture of him, little Presley, with one of our graduation caps on. So
I would love to see that.
it was.
Oh my
I'll
gosh.
find it. It's here somewhere.
That's awesome.
So anyway, we've had an interesting life for sure. And then he went to medical school after that, Galveston, UTMB, and I worked for IBM. They had an office there, and just so happened that Carla came through just a week after the first day of school, and it was devastating to Galveston. And since IBM had electronic typewriters, we were way above everybody else. But when there was no electricity, it didn't work. So we were out of luck on that one. But anyway, we made it through 4 years of medical school, and from there went to Brackenridge Hospital for Joe's internship. And I rarely saw him. Actually, Joe David was born November. He was born in February of '64. So, and Joe graduated in 3 years actually. I think it was June, the end of June of '64, and then he went to Brackenridge, and they had a very short team of doctors at the time, and so the rotation would be I'd take him to work Sunday morning, and he'd work all day Sunday, all Sunday night, and all day Monday. And then if we were lucky and the boys and I had to go pick him up and bring him home, if we were lucky, he would get off at 8 o'clock at night. And needless to say, he'd go to bed and crash, and so until the next morning, and it was time to get up and do that whole routine again for a whole year. So it was a little bit stressful on all of us, needless to say, mostly on Daddy. And then good old Uncle Sam decided that they needed him in the military. All doctors were drafted. We had one intern that was to turn 35, but he was no exception. He got to go too.
Yay!
Yay! Yay! So everybody went.
Oh
And so he did have the choice of which branch of the service he wanted to go. So he started taking, opinions from doctors that were there in Austin, and they said, well, Navy is probably your best option. And he said, I think he must have had a relative or something that was in the submarine service. He said, if you can get into that, it's a very restricted sub-branch of the Navy, but if you can get into that would really be special. So that's what he requested, and he even got to be interviewed by Hyman Rickover, the chief in charge of nuclear submarines. And so he got to be on the submarine, but when we were stationed in Groton, Connecticut, which has been on the news lately, and cast off at sea, and the boys and I didn't see him for 2 months because he was who knows where, under the deep blue sea. And there was no communication whatsoever. It was not allowed. Unless there was an emergency at home, then they were able to get very limited communication through. But anyway, we managed that for 2.5 years. And so after that, we moved back to LaPorte, and he went into practice family medicine with his dad, who had been there for a number of years. And we're in LaPorte area, practicing for 45 years, and I worked with him in the office for 40 of those years.
That's awesome.
So it has not been dull, for sure.
That's the goal.
So I'm here to tell you, I was never bored. But the last few years, I managed to have a mouthful of sores constantly, which were very painful and difficult to live with. And so then on the last few weeks, my blood pressure went 200 over 100, and he said, well, it's time to get out of here. So we shut the doors and passed our records and our patients on to other physicians, and we hated to leave the patients because we never knew in the morning when we got to the office what the day has in store. That is the interesting part about family medicine. Yeah. Different faces and different problems every day.
Yeah, that's so fun.